This passport looks fake. People like you probably scammed welfare to get this trash. Karen Mitchell's voice cuts through Chicago O'Hare's morning rush at Gate B7. Her manicured fingers wave Patricia Williams' passport like evidence before the crowded terminal. Patricia's voice remains steady despite the fluorescent lights glaring down. That's a legitimate United States passport. Return it immediately. Legitimate? Karen laughs, her red lipstick stretching into a cruel smile. The smell of jet fuel drifts through ventilation as business travelers stop to stare. I know your kind, always trying to fly somewhere you don't belong with fake papers. You have no authority to... I have every right in my airport. Karen pulls out a silver Zippo, flame dancing. Time for a reality check, sweetheart. The blue passport catches fire. Patricia watches in horror as Karen drops the burning document into a metal trash can, smoke rising between them. Have you ever seen someone so blinded by hatred that they destroyed their own life with a single match? Tuesday morning, 8:30 a.m. Chicago O'Hare Terminal. Two pulses with the rhythm of American commerce. Business travelers clutch leather briefcases while families wrangle oversized suitcases toward departure gates. The PA system crackles with flight announcements in 3 languages. Judge Patricia Williams had arrived 90 minutes early, rolling her black Samsonite through the automatic doors. The rubber wheels clicked against polished marble as she navigated toward United's departure area. Her navy blazer hung perfectly over dark jeans, low heels clicking with quiet confidence. At 52, she carried herself with the measured grace of someone accustomed to commanding courtrooms. Her iPhone buzzed with case files from the Northern District of Illinois. Tomorrow's federal hearing would determine whether Chicago's housing discrimination lawsuit could proceed as a class action. 3,000 families waited for her decision. The flight to Washington couldn't be missed. Patricia observed the morning patterns while standing in line. Gate agents smiled warmly at white passengers, processing their documents with efficient pleasantries. Have a wonderful trip, Mr. Johnson. Enjoy your vacation, Mrs. Peterson. The interactions flowed like clockwork. The atmosphere shifted when travelers of color approached. Conversations became clipped. Documents received extra scrutiny. A Hispanic family ahead of Patricia endured questions about their children's birth certificates. An elderly black man was asked twice about his destination. Patricia's legal training cataloged each microaggression. Patterns of bias were her specialty. She'd built her career dismantling institutional discrimination, one case at a time. Her quiet observations weren't paranoia, they were professional expertise. Karen Mitchell commanded her domain from behind the United counter. 15 years of gate agent experience had taught her exactly how much authority she could wield. Her blonde hair was styled to television perfection, makeup applied like armor against the early shift. The red United blazer fit her frame like a uniform of power. Karen took pride in her role as America's gatekeeper. Not everyone deserved to fly, in her opinion. Security meant vigilance against certain types who might exploit the system. She saw herself as patriotic, protecting honest travelers from freeloaders and criminals. The morning routine energized her. Each passenger represented a small test of her authority. Most submitted without question, but occasionally someone challenged her judgment. Those moments reminded Karen why her job mattered. Patricia watched Karen's performance with clinical interest. The woman's body language telegraphed her intentions. Shoulders squared against minorities, relaxed with white families. Voice modulated from honey sweet to bureaucratic ice, depending on skin color. Every gesture is calculated to establish dominance. The terminal hummed with controlled chaos. Departure boards flickered with gate changes while janitors pushed industrial mops across endless floors. Coffee shops dispensed caffeine to bleary-eyed travelers clutching boarding passes. Children's voices echoed off glass walls 30 feet high. Patricia checked her Rolex. 8:45 a.m. The 10:30 flight would deliver her to Reagan National with hours to spare. Federal judges didn't miss court appearances. Her reputation had been built on punctuality and preparation, never giving opposing counsel ammunition for delays. She pulled out her leather portfolio, reviewing testimony transcripts while the line crept forward. Housing discrimination cases required meticulous attention to detail. Corporate lawyers would exploit any procedural mistake to derail justice for working families. Other passengers of color exchanged knowing glances as Karen's voice grew sharper with each interaction. A young black mother clutched her toddler tighter after enduring questions about her ticket validity. An Asian businessman's jaw clenched as Karen demanded additional identification for security purposes. Patricia recognized the exhaustion in their eyes. Every airport, every official interaction carried this undercurrent of suspicion. Success didn't shield anyone from assumptions about their worthiness to exist in certain spaces. Karen's power trip accelerated as morning wore on. Each small victory over a passenger inflated her confidence. She'd made a Hispanic teenager nearly cry over his student visa. An elderly black woman apologized repeatedly for her difficult name pronunciation. The gate area filled with the Tuesday business crowd. Lawyers, consultants, and executives scrolled through phones while waiting for boarding announcements. Most remained oblivious to Karen's discriminatory theater playing out before them. Patricia studied Karen's badge number, 247851. 15 years of service according to the small pin collection adorning her lapel. Long enough to perfect these techniques. Long enough to believe she was untouchable. The morning sun streamed through terminal windows, casting long shadows across the waiting area. Patricia moved 3 positions closer to Karen's counter. Her federal court hearing waited in Washington. Justice for 3,000 families hung in the balance. Neither woman knew their collision would reshape airport discrimination policies nationwide. Patricia approached Karen's counter at 9:15 a.m., her heels clicking against polished marble. She placed her passport, boarding pass, and federal ID in a neat row, as she'd done hundreds of times before. The morning sun cast sharp angles through terminal windows, illuminating dust particles floating in recycled air. Karen's eyes narrowed as she examined the documents. Her manicured nails drummed against the counter surface, each tap deliberate and theatrical. The scent of her heavy perfume mixed with the airport's coffee-tinged atmosphere, creating an oddly suffocating combination. "Is this really your passport?" Karen's voice carried across the gate area, designed to draw attention from every nearby passenger. "The photo doesn't look like you at all. Are you sure this belongs to you?" Patricia maintained her professional composure, though her legal instincts activated like radar detecting incoming threats. "I assure you it's completely authentic. I travel internationally for federal business on a regular basis." "Federal business?" Karen's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass, echoing off the terminal's high ceilings. She held the passport higher, ensuring nearby passengers could witness her performance. "Right. What kind of federal business could someone like you possibly have, cleaning federal buildings?" The insult landed like a physical blow. Patricia's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained steady as courtroom marble. "Ma'am, I'd prefer to keep my travel details private. May I please have my documents returned?" "Not so fast, honey." Karen flipped through the passport pages with exaggerated suspicion, her red fingernails tracing visa stamps like a detective examining evidence. "These international stamps look suspicious. Have you been to a lot of interesting places where people learn to forge documents?" A line of passengers formed behind Patricia, creating an unwilling audience for Karen's discrimination theater. Business travelers checked their expensive watches impatiently while families juggled oversized luggage and restless children. Karen's performance was creating exactly the public humiliation she craved. "Ma'am, I need to board my flight," Patricia said firmly, her voice carrying decades of courtroom authority. "My documents are completely in order, and this delay is unnecessary." Karen's supervisor, Brad Thompson, approached from the employee break room, steam rising from his coffee mug as he observed the interaction with visible discomfort. At 55, he'd witnessed Karen's power trips countless times, but consistently chose the coward's path of willful blindness. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen announced loudly enough for the entire gate area to hear, "we have a serious document situation here that requires very careful security review." Patricia's cheeks burned with embarrassment as dozens of heads turned in their direction. A distinguished businessman behind her muttered disapproving comments under his breath. A young mother instinctively pulled her children closer, sensing the toxic tension crackling through the air. "There's absolutely no situation here," Patricia replied, her legal training keeping her voice level despite mounting frustration. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor privately, immediately. If your documents are legitimate, you shouldn't mind everyone hearing about our security procedures." Karen sneered, her voice dripping with false authority. She waved Brad over with theatrical urgency, like summoning backup for a dangerous criminal. "We might have fraudulent federal papers here, Brad." Brad reluctantly approached, his expression apologetic but cowardly. "What exactly seems to be the problem, Karen?" "This woman's attempting to use highly suspicious documents," Karen explained dramatically, holding up Patricia's passport like courtroom evidence. "Look at this photograph carefully. Does that actually look like her to you? I think we're dealing with identity theft." Patricia turned to Brad with measured authority, her judicial bearing evident despite casual travel attire. "Sir, I'm formally requesting to speak with your manager immediately. This treatment is highly inappropriate and potentially discriminatory." "I don't know what back-alley scam artist sold you this fake passport," Karen continued, completely ignoring Patricia's reasonable request. "But this is precisely why we need much stricter border controls and document verification." The crowd around them swelled like gathering storm clouds. Several passengers pulled out smartphones, sensing viral-worthy drama unfolding before their eyes. Patricia noticed the recording devices but couldn't protest, without appearing guilty of Karen's fabricated accusations. "Ma'am, these accusations are completely unfounded and professionally inappropriate," Patricia said, her voice carrying the unmistakable weight of extensive courtroom experience. "I formally demand to know your complete name and official employee identification number." Karen's eyes flashed with murderous fury. Nobody, absolutely nobody, challenged her authority in her own professional domain. She reached for her security radio with exaggerated dramatic flair. "Security to Gate B7 immediately. We have a potential document fraud situation requiring urgent law enforcement response." Patricia's heart rate increased, but not from fear or panic. Her razor-sharp legal mind was systematically cataloging every single word, gesture, and witness for the inevitable federal complaint she'd file. Karen was methodically digging her own professional grave with each discriminatory comment. "You're making an extremely serious mistake," Patricia warned quietly, her voice carrying judicial gravitas. "I very strongly advise you to reconsider this dangerous course of action before it's too late." "What exactly are you going to do about it?" Karen shot back venomously, emboldened by the growing crowd of fascinated spectators. "Sue me? Threaten me? People like you always threaten lawsuits every single time you don't get your way through proper channels." Officer Mike Rodriguez arrived within 3 minutes, his police radio crackling with urgent static. At 32, he'd handled countless routine airport disputes, but rarely witnessed such blatantly obvious discrimination unfolding in real time. "What's the current situation here?" Rodriguez asked professionally, his trained eyes scanning both women's body language for threat assessment. Karen launched into her completely fabricated story before Patricia could utter a single word in defense. "Officer, this woman's attempting to use obviously fraudulent federal documents. I spotted the sophisticated forgeries immediately. She became verbally aggressive and threatening when I properly questioned her suspicious paperwork." "That's absolutely and completely false," Patricia interjected firmly, her natural judicial authority bleeding through despite her casual travel attire. "Officer, this employee is making entirely baseless accusations while engaging in clear discriminatory harassment." Rodriguez studied both women with practiced law enforcement eyes. Karen's over-the-top theatrical outrage contrasted starkly with Patricia's composed professional demeanor. His experienced instincts strongly suggested something was fundamentally wrong with Karen's hysterical version of events. "Ma'am, may I please examine your identification documents?" Rodriguez asked Patricia with genuine respect, his tone notably different from Karen's hostile approach. Before Patricia could respond appropriately, Karen interrupted again with poisonous urgency. "Officer, please don't let her fool you with additional fake identification cards. These people are becoming incredibly sophisticated with high-quality document forgeries." Patricia's legendary patience was approaching its absolute breaking point. "Officer, I'm completely happy to provide any identification you professionally require. However, I want this entire interaction officially documented and properly recorded. She's clearly trying to intimidate you with legal threats." Karen whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. "They always immediately play the victim card when caught red-handed in criminal activity." Rodriguez's professional discomfort was now visibly obvious to everyone present. Karen's inflammatory language was crossing legal lines he couldn't professionally ignore without compromising his own integrity. "Ma'am," he addressed Karen directly, "let's please focus strictly on the actual documents themselves, not inappropriate personal observations about passengers." Karen sensed her carefully constructed authority beginning to slip away and made a calculated decision to escalate the confrontation dramatically. She reached into her desk drawer and deliberately pulled out a small bottle of coffee creamer, her movements purposeful and malicious. "Oops!" she exclaimed with theatrical fake surprise, deliberately spilling the sticky liquid directly across Patricia's legitimate federal passport. The brown creamer soaked immediately into the distinctive blue cover, staining the official government seal. "How terribly clumsy of me." Patricia stared in absolute shock as her authentic passport absorbed the deliberately spilled liquid. "You just intentionally damaged legitimate federal property." "It was clearly a simple accident," Karen replied with mock innocence, though her satisfied smirk betrayed her malicious intentions to every observer. Besides, if it was actually real government property, a tiny little spill wouldn't matter at all. The crowd gasped audibly as coffee creamer dripped from Patricia's damaged passport onto the terminal floor. Several passengers were now openly filming the confrontation, their phones capturing every moment of Karen's escalating discrimination. A white businessman in his 60s shook his head in visible disgust at Karen's unprofessional behavior. "Ma'am, that was clearly intentional," Rodriguez said firmly, his professional mask finally slipping. "You cannot deliberately damage passengers' official documents under any circumstances." Karen's confidence swelled with the growing attention. She was center stage now, teaching this uppity woman a lesson that everyone could witness and remember. The power coursing through her veins felt intoxicating, addictive. "Sometimes unfortunate accidents happen when people bring suspicious items to secure airport facilities," she replied coldly, her voice carrying across the gate area. "Maybe next time she'll bring legitimate, authentic documents instead of forgeries." Patricia pulled out her iPhone to document the deliberately damaged passport. The federal seal was partially obscured by brown stains, though still clearly visible to anyone with functioning eyesight. Her hands trembled slightly with controlled rage. "I'm photographing this intentional damage for my official federal complaint," Patricia announced, her voice carrying unmistakable judicial authority that made nearby passengers straighten their postures instinctively. Karen laughed harshly, the sound echoing off glass walls like breaking bottles. "Federal complaint? To whom exactly? I've been performing this job excellently for 15 years. Nobody's going to believe your word over my documented professional record." The boarding announcement for Patricia's 10:30 flight echoed through the terminal speakers. Her critical federal hearing was now genuinely at risk because of this woman's racist performance theater. 3,000 families awaiting housing justice hung in the balance. "You need to resolve this situation immediately," Patricia demanded, her legendary judicial composure showing hairline cracks. "I have urgent, time-sensitive business in Washington that cannot be delayed." "Should have considered that before bringing fake papers to my airport," Karen replied with cruel satisfaction, savoring every moment of Patricia's visible frustration. "Actions have consequences, sweetheart." Rodriguez stepped between the two women, his training kicking in as the situation spiraled beyond normal passenger disputes. "Ladies, let's take a step back and resolve this professionally." Karen wasn't finished with her power display. She reached for her desk phone with theatrical flourish, dialing airport security's direct line while maintaining eye contact with Patricia. "This is Gate Agent Mitchell at B7. I need additional security personnel immediately. We have a passenger who's becoming increasingly belligerent about her fraudulent documents being exposed." "That's a complete fabrication," Patricia protested, her voice rising for the first time. "Officer Rodriguez can testify that I've remained completely calm and professional throughout this harassment." Rodriguez nodded reluctantly. "Ma'am, the passenger has been cooperative. Maybe we should—" "Officer, you don't understand how sophisticated these document fraud rings have become," Karen interrupted, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "They coach people on how to act innocent when caught. This woman is clearly trained in deception techniques." More security personnel arrived, their heavy boots echoing against marble floors. Captain Sarah Carter approached with 2 additional officers, their presence drawing even larger crowds of curious travelers. The gate area transformed into an impromptu theater of injustice. "What's the situation report?" Captain Carter asked Rodriguez, her experienced eyes immediately assessing the tension between Karen and Patricia. "Gate Agent Mitchell claims document fraud. The passenger denies all accusations and wants to file complaints about treatment," Rodriguez explained carefully, his discomfort with Karen's behavior evident in his measured tone. Karen launched into an elaborate performance for the new audience. "Captain, this woman attempted to use obviously forged federal documents. When I properly identified the forgeries, she became hostile and threatening. I was forced to confiscate the fake papers for security purposes." "You deliberately damaged my legitimate passport with coffee," Patricia shot back, holding up the stained document as evidence. "This is systematic harassment based on racial discrimination." "Race has nothing to do with proper security procedures," Karen replied with false indignation, though her smirk betrayed her true motivations. "I treat every passenger exactly the same way, regardless of background." Captain Carter examined the damaged passport carefully. Even with coffee stains, the federal seals appeared authentic to her trained eye. The document showed extensive international travel, suggesting legitimate business purposes. "Ma'am, this passport appears genuine," Carter told Karen quietly. "Perhaps we should reconsider." "Appearances can be deceiving, Captain," Karen interrupted loudly. "These forgeries are becoming incredibly sophisticated. We cannot afford to let our guard down against security threats." Patricia's flight boarding continued in the background, passengers streaming toward the jetway while her travel plans disintegrated. Each passing minute decreased her chances of reaching Washington in time for tomorrow's critical hearing. "I'm going to miss my flight because of these false accusations," Patricia said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "This deliberate delay is causing real harm to federal court proceedings." "Federal court?" Karen laughed mockingly. "What possible business could you have with federal courts? Jury duty? Maybe some child support hearing?" The insults were becoming more personal, more vicious. Patricia recognized the escalating pattern from discrimination cases she'd adjudicated. Karen was drunk on power, pushing boundaries to see how far she could go. "Ma'am, that's inappropriate," Rodriguez warned Karen, but his authority was limited in this complex situation. Karen ignored the warning, emboldened by her audience. "Officer, you have to understand the bigger picture here. People like this woman exploit our immigration system, forge documents, take advantage of programs they're not entitled to. It's my patriotic duty to stop them." "People like me?" Patricia repeated her judicial training, recognizing classic discriminatory language. "Please elaborate on what you mean by that specific phrase." Karen realized she'd gone too far but couldn't retreat without losing face. "You know exactly what I mean. Don't try to twist my words into something they're not." Captain Carter was growing increasingly uncomfortable with Karen's language and behavior. Her years of security experience had taught her to recognize genuine threats versus manufactured drama. This situation felt entirely manufactured. "Gate Agent Mitchell, I think we should de-escalate this situation," Carter suggested diplomatically. "Perhaps we could resolve this more quietly." "There's nothing to de-escalate," Karen insisted stubbornly. "We have clear security protocols for suspicious documents. I'm following procedures exactly as written." "Show me the written procedure for damaging passengers' documents," Patricia challenged, her legal mind seizing on Karen's claim. "I'd like to review the specific policy you're citing." Karen's face flushed red as she realized her mistake. No written procedure authorized destroying passengers' property. Her actions were entirely personal, driven by prejudice rather than policy. "I don't need to justify proper security measures to suspicious passengers," she replied defensively, avoiding Patricia's direct question about written procedures. The crowd around them had grown to nearly 50 people, all filming and whispering among themselves. Social media posts were already appearing with hashtags about airport discrimination. Karen was becoming an internet sensation for all the wrong reasons. "Ma'am, I'm requesting your supervisor's immediate presence," Patricia demanded with growing authority. "This situation has moved far beyond normal passenger service issues." "I am the supervisor here," Karen shot back, though her voice betrayed growing uncertainty. "Brad Thompson reports to me, not the other way around." Brad had been watching from a safe distance, clearly uncomfortable with Karen's escalating behavior, but unwilling to intervene decisively. His cowardice was becoming obvious to everyone present. Patricia made a strategic decision that would change everything. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small leather wallet, her movements deliberate and purposeful. "Ma'am, before this goes any further, I'm going to give you one final opportunity to resolve this situation appropriately," Patricia said quietly, her voice carrying an unmistakable warning. Karen's arrogance piqued at the perceived threat. "Final opportunity? What could someone like you possibly do to someone like me? I hold all the power here, sweetheart. You're just another passenger who doesn't know her place." Patricia's fingers closed around her federal judicial identification card. The moment of truth was approaching like an unstoppable avalanche. "Are you absolutely certain you want to continue down this path?" Patricia asked with judicial gravity. "Because once we cross certain lines, there's no going back." "I'm not afraid of your empty threats," Karen sneered confidently. "Bring your worst. I've dealt with troublemakers like you my entire career." Patricia slowly withdrew her federal ID, holding it just below counter level where only she could see it. The weight of 15 years on the federal bench rested in her palm. "Last chance to make this right," she whispered. Karen leaned forward aggressively. "Do your worst, honey. I'm untouchable." Patricia lifted her federal judicial identification above the counter, her voice cutting through the terminal noise with unmistakable authority. "Officer Rodriguez, I am Judge Patricia Williams of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois." The words hit the crowded gate area like a thunderbolt. Rodriguez's eyes widened as he examined the authentic federal credentials, his hands trembling slightly as he processed the gold judicial seal and official photograph. Karen's laughter died in her throat, replaced by confused silence. "Anyone can buy fake IDs online these days," she stammered weakly, though her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Captain Carter, please verify my credentials through federal databases," Patricia continued with judicial calm. "My federal bar number is IL 7429. I was confirmed by the Senate in 2019. Chen immediately radioed for her portable verification system, while Rodriguez examined Patricia's identification more carefully. The federal judicial seal was unmistakably authentic, with security features impossible to counterfeit. "Ma'am!" "Your Honor," Rodriguez corrected himself, his entire demeanor shifting from casual authority to profound respect. "I apologize for any inconvenience." Karen's face transformed from smug satisfaction to dawning horror. The color drained from her cheeks like water escaping a broken dam. But you looked like... how was I supposed to know?" "Know what, Miss Mitchell?" Patricia asked with quiet judicial authority. "That a black woman could hold federal judicial office? That people who look like me might possess legitimate government credentials?" The crowd pressed closer, phones capturing every moment of Karen's psychological collapse. Dozens of passengers realized they were witnessing historic justice unfolding in real time. The recordings would be viewed millions of times within hours. Captain Carter's verification system chirped confirmation. "Your Honor, federal databases confirm your identity and current judicial status. I deeply apologize for this inappropriate treatment." Karen's knees nearly buckled as the magnitude of her mistake crashed over her like a tsunami. "Your Honor, I was just doing my job. Following security protocols, how could I have known?" "By treating all passengers with basic human dignity," Patricia replied evenly. "By not making assumptions based on race. By following actual written procedures instead of personal prejudices." Brad Thompson finally approached, his coffee mug shaking in his trembling hands. 15 years of enabling Karen's discrimination had led to this catastrophic moment. His own job security evaporated before his eyes. "Your Honor, on behalf of United Airlines, I sincerely apologize," Brad began desperately. "This is not representative of our company values." Patricia's judicial voice carried across the silent terminal. "Mr. Thompson, your employee deliberately destroyed my official United States passport while making explicitly racist comments. Multiple witnesses have recorded her violations of federal civil rights law." Karen's desperate backpedaling became increasingly frantic. "Your Honor, I treat everyone the same way. I don't see color. This was just a misunderstanding." "Miss Mitchell, you called me people like you 17 times during our interaction." Patricia replied with courtroom precision. You suggested I obtain my passport through welfare fraud. You deliberately damaged federal property. Which part was a misunderstanding? The terminal had fallen completely silent except for the ambient hum of air conditioning and distant flight announcements. Hundreds of passengers stood transfixed, witnessing the complete demolition of institutional racism in real time. Rodriguez spoke carefully into his radio. Dispatch, we need additional supervisory personnel at Gate B7. We have a significant situation requiring immediate management attention. Karen's supervisor status meant nothing now. Her 15 years of unchecked authority crumbled like ancient parchment. Your Honor, please, I have children, a mortgage. I was just trying to protect airport security. By burning my passport? Patricia asked with devastating calm. Show me the written security protocol authorizing destruction of passengers' legal documents. Karen couldn't answer because no such protocol existed. Her actions were entirely personal, driven by racial hatred rather than legitimate security concerns. Every witness understood this fundamental truth. Captain Carter began immediate damage control procedures. Your Honor, we're implementing emergency protocols. Agent Mitchell will be removed from duty pending investigation. We'll provide complete cooperation with any federal inquiry. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause as justice began materializing before their eyes. Karen's face crumpled as she realized her career was over, her reputation destroyed, her future shattered by her own racist choices. Your Honor, what can United Airlines do to make this right? Brad asked desperately, knowing his own employment hung by a thread. Patricia's response carried the weight of federal judicial authority. Mr. Thompson, I'll be filing formal complaints with the Department of Transportation, the FBI Civil Rights Division, and the Federal Aviation Administration. Ms. Mitchell's actions constitute multiple federal crimes. Karen's legs gave out entirely. Rodriguez caught her arm as she swayed, the reality of federal prosecution hitting like a physical blow. Federal crimes? But I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to commit federal crimes when you deliberately burned a United States passport? Patricia asked with judicial precision. You didn't mean to violate civil rights when you made racist assumptions? Your intentions are irrelevant to the law. The terminal's PA system crackled with boarding announcements for other flights while Patricia's original departure taxied away from the gate. Her federal hearing was now genuinely at risk, but a much larger principle was at stake. Airport management personnel rushed toward Gate B7 as word spread through internal communications. United Airlines' worst nightmare was unfolding in real time, broadcast live across social media platforms. Karen looked up at Patricia with desperate eyes. Your Honor, please, I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. Please don't destroy my life. Patricia's response would be remembered in civil rights law textbooks for generations. Miss Mitchell, you destroyed your own life the moment you let hatred overcome human decency. I'm simply ensuring there are consequences for your choices. Captain Carter moved with swift decisiveness, her radio crackling as she coordinated emergency response protocols. All units, we need immediate supervisory presence at Gate B7, Priority 1 situation. Karen's hands shook uncontrollably as the weight of her actions crashed down like an avalanche. Captain, please, this is all a terrible misunderstanding. I was just following procedures. Which procedures authorize burning passengers' documents? Carter asked sharply, her patience exhausted. Show me the manual that permits racist commentary during security screenings. Rodriguez began the formal arrest process, his Miranda rights card emerging from his uniform pocket. The irony wasn't lost on nearby passengers. Karen was about to be arrested in the same terminal where she'd wielded unchecked authority for 15 years. Ma'am, you're under arrest for destruction of federal property and civil rights violations, Rodriguez announced clearly, his voice carrying across the silent gate area. You have the right to remain silent. Karen's hysterical protests echoed off glass walls as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. This isn't fair. I didn't know she was a judge. How could I possibly have known? Ignorance of someone's occupation doesn't justify racist behavior, Patricia replied with judicial calm. You would have treated any black passenger exactly the same way. United Airlines District Manager James Peterson arrived breathlessly, his expensive suit wrinkled from running through the terminal. Behind him trailed a nervous entourage of corporate damage control specialists. Your Honor, I'm James Peterson, United's Regional Director, he panted, immediately recognizing the catastrophic scope of this public relations nightmare. Please accept our most sincere apologies for this inexcusable treatment. Patricia's response was measured but firm. Mr. Peterson, your employee committed federal crimes while representing your company. This isn't a customer service issue, it's a criminal matter. Karen's desperate attempts at damage control became increasingly pathetic. Your Honor, I have children who depend on me, a mortgage, 15 years of excellent service. This one mistake shouldn't ruin my entire life. One mistake? Patricia repeated with devastating precision. You made racist assumptions, destroyed federal property, filed false accusations, and attempted to have me arrested. Which specific action was your one mistake? The crowd pressed closer, their phones capturing Karen's complete psychological collapse. Social media posts were already trending with #airportjustice and #burnpassport hashtags. Karen's mugshot would be international news within hours. Peterson huddled frantically with his legal team while Karen's arrest proceeded. United's stock price would plummet when markets opened. Congressional hearings were inevitable. Lawsuits would follow like vultures circling carrion. Your Honor, United Airlines is implementing immediate corrective action, Peterson announced desperately. Agent Mitchell is terminated for cause, effective immediately. No severance, no benefits, no references. Karen's sobs echoed through the terminal as her 15-year career disintegrated in real time. You can't fire me. I have union protection. I was following company guidelines. Show me the company guideline authorizing document destruction, Peterson replied coldly, already calculating legal liability. Karen had become a corporate pariah, toxic to any future employment in transportation. Rodriguez completed the arrest procedures as additional FBI personnel arrived to secure the scene. Karen's fingerprints would be in federal databases within hours, her criminal record permanent and searchable. Your Honor, we're arranging immediate first-class accommodation on the next D.C. flight. Peterson continued his damage control. Full refund, travel expenses, whatever you require. Patricia's response carried judicial authority. Mr. Peterson, I appreciate the gesture, but this situation requires systematic change, not individual compensation. How many other passengers has Miss Mitchell discriminated against over 15 years? The question hung in the air like a sword of Damocles. Peterson's legal team exchanged nervous glances, knowing that discovery processes would reveal years of complaints, lawsuits, and covered-up discrimination incidents. Captain Carter supervised Karen's removal from the gate area, her former authority replaced by orange detention clothing and federal custody. Transport to federal holding pending arraignment, she radioed efficiently. Karen's family members were already calling, having seen viral videos of her arrest. Her husband faced inevitable divorce proceedings. Her children would endure school bullying. Her elderly parents would see their daughter's shame broadcast globally. Your Honor, what federal agencies will be investigating this incident? Peterson asked with visible dread, knowing his company faced potential 8-figure penalties. Patricia's judicial response would reshape airport discrimination policies nationwide. The Department of Transportation, FBI Civil Rights Division, Federal Aviation Administration, and Department of Justice will all receive formal complaints with video evidence. Airport authority personnel began crowd control as media vans arrived outside the terminal. CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC would lead evening broadcasts with this story. Karen had become the face of institutional racism in America. Your Honor, is there any possibility of resolving this matter quietly? Peterson asked desperately, though he already knew the answer. Patricia's final response to United's damage control efforts carried the weight of federal judicial authority and 15 years of fighting institutional discrimination. Within 2 hours of Karen's arrest, videos of the passport burning had exploded across every major social media platform. The hashtag #burnpassport accumulated over 3 million views as the footage spread like wildfire through Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook feeds worldwide. CNN's Anderson Cooper led the evening broadcast with breaking news. Tonight, shocking video from Chicago O'Hare Airport shows a United Airlines gate agent burning a black woman's passport, only to discover she had just committed a federal crime against a sitting federal judge. The video played on split screens while legal experts analyzed the potential charges. Former FBI Director James Comey appeared via satellite, explaining the severity of destroying federal documents. This isn't just discrimination, it's a federal felony carrying up to 25 years in prison. Judge Patricia Williams maintained her dignified composure during a carefully orchestrated press conference at Reagan National Airport after catching the evening flight to Washington. Standing before a bank of microphones, she addressed the nation with judicial authority. "This incident wasn't about me personally," Patricia said, her voice steady despite the media chaos. "It represents the daily discrimination millions of Americans face without recourse. The difference is that I had the platform and authority to demand accountability." Meanwhile, in Chicago, FBI Special Agent Maria Santos led a rapid response civil rights investigation. Her team seized security footage from 17 different camera angles, documenting every moment of Karen's systematic harassment and criminal behavior. "We're treating this as a federal hate crime with conspiracy to deprive civil rights," Agent Santos announced to gathered media. "The evidence is overwhelming and includes multiple federal violations." Karen Mitchell sat in federal detention, still wearing her stained United Airlines uniform, as the magnitude of her situation crystallized. Her court-appointed attorney, Public Defender Robert Carter, delivered devastating news about her legal prospects. "Karen, you committed these crimes on camera in front of 50 witnesses against a federal judge," Carter explained grimly. "The prosecution has an airtight case. We need to discuss plea negotiations immediately." Congressional response was swift and bipartisan. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler announced immediate hearings on transportation discrimination, while Senator Elizabeth Warren introduced emergency legislation mandating federal civil rights training for all airport personnel. "The American people deserve to travel without facing racist harassment from government-sanctioned employees," Warren declared from the Senate floor. "This legislation will ensure Karen Mitchell's crimes never happen again." United Airlines faced an unprecedented corporate crisis. CEO Scott Kirby convened emergency board meetings as the company's stock price plummeted 15% in after-hours trading. Legal experts predicted civil lawsuits reaching hundreds of millions of dollars. "We are conducting a comprehensive review of all employee conduct over the past decade," Kirby announced during a hastily arranged press conference. "This behavior violates everything United Airlines stands for." The Department of Transportation launched parallel investigations into systemic discrimination across the airline industry. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg personally called Judge Williams to discuss federal policy reforms. "Your dignity in the face of such hatred exemplifies the best of American values," Secretary Buttigieg told her during their recorded conversation. "We will ensure this leads to meaningful change." Karen's criminal trial began just 6 weeks later, fast-tracked due to overwhelming public interest and clear video evidence. Federal Judge Michael Harrison presided over proceedings that were broadcast live on C-SPAN and major news networks. Prosecutor Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Kim presented devastating evidence to a packed courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will see video evidence of the defendant deliberately burning a United States passport while making explicitly racist statements." Karen's defense team struggled against insurmountable evidence. Defense attorney Carter attempted an insanity plea, arguing that Karen's racism represented mental illness, but psychiatric evaluators found her legally competent and fully aware of her criminal actions. The trial's most powerful moment came when Judge Williams testified with quiet dignity about the incident's impact. Miss Mitchell's actions represented institutionalized racism that countless Americans face daily. The difference is that I had the platform to demand justice. Character witnesses painted a devastating portrait of Karen's 15-year pattern of discrimination. Former passengers testified via video link about similar harassment they'd endured, but never reported due to fear and lack of resources. Airlines employee Marcus Johnson, a black baggage handler, testified about Karen's workplace racism. "She called security on black employees constantly, claiming we looked suspicious or didn't belong in certain areas." Expert testimony revealed the broader scope of Karen's criminal behavior. Digital forensics specialist Dr. Amanda Foster presented evidence of Karen's racist social media posts, including celebrations of police brutality against black Americans and support for white supremacist organizations. The defendant's online activity demonstrates clear premeditation and ideological motivation for her criminal actions, Dr. Foster explained to the riveted jury. The prosecution played the complete airport security footage, showing Karen's systematic escalation from verbal harassment to property destruction. Jurors visibly recoiled as they watched her deliberately burn Judge Williams' passport while laughing. Karen's sentencing hearing drew national media attention as victims of her past discrimination testified about lasting psychological trauma. The courtroom overflowed with civil rights advocates and federal law enforcement officials. Judge Harrison delivered a historic sentence that would reshape federal hate crime prosecutions. Miss Mitchell, your actions represent the ugly face of American racism. You abused your government authority to terrorize a citizen based solely on race. The court sentences you to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation. You will pay $500,000 in restitution to Judge Williams and perform 1,000 hours of community service teaching about the consequences of racism. Karen collapsed as the gavel fell, her life forever altered by 30 minutes of racist hatred. Her husband had already filed for divorce, her children faced relentless bullying, and her elderly parents disowned her publicly. The broader impact extended far beyond Karen's individual punishment. The Department of Transportation mandated comprehensive bias training for all airport employees nationwide. Anonymous reporting systems were established for discrimination complaints. 47 airport employees across 12 states were terminated following investigations triggered by Karen's case. Airlines implemented body cameras for all customer service positions and established federal civil rights monitors at major airports. Judge Williams established the Airport Justice Foundation with her restitution money, providing legal representation for discrimination victims. The foundation filed class action lawsuits against multiple airlines, recovering millions for affected passengers. Karen's crime exposed a cancer that had been growing in our transportation system for decades, Judge Williams explained during the foundation's launch event. Her prosecution opened the door for systematic change. Congressional legislation passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, creating federal civil rights enforcement mechanisms specifically for transportation discrimination. The Airport Accountability Act mandated annual bias audits and substantial penalties for discriminatory conduct. International attention focused on American airport discrimination, with European Union officials citing Karen's case as evidence of systematic racism in U.S. travel policies. The diplomatic embarrassment prompted additional State Department reforms. Karen's mugshot became a cautionary tale in civil rights training programs worldwide, her racist crimes serving as a permanent reminder of hatred's consequences. Her federal conviction ensured she would never work in transportation again. 4 years later, as Karen sat in her federal prison cell, videos of her passport burning continued circulating as educational tools about the price of racism. 2 years after Karen Mitchell's federal conviction, Judge Patricia Williams stood at the podium of Howard University Law School's graduation ceremony. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows as 300 future attorneys awaited her commencement address. Class of 2027, you enter a legal profession forever changed by one woman's 30 minutes of hatred, Patricia began, her voice carrying the wisdom earned through decades of fighting injustice. Karen Mitchell thought she was just burning a passport. Instead, she ignited a revolution. The graduates listened intently as Patricia outlined the systematic changes born from that Chicago airport confrontation. Federal civil rights prosecutions had increased by 300%. Airport discrimination complaints dropped 70% nationwide after mandatory bias training and body camera requirements. The Mitchell case, as legal scholars now called it, had become required study in every law school civil rights curriculum. Patricia's dignified response to racist harassment demonstrated how individual courage could reshape institutional policies affecting millions. Meanwhile, in federal correctional institution Danbury, Karen Mitchell folded laundry in the prison industrial program, her orange uniform a stark contrast to the designer blazers she once wore with authority. At 47, she faced 2 more years of incarceration, followed by supervised probation. Karen's family had completely disintegrated. Her ex-husband remarried and relocated to Oregon with their teenage children, who legally changed their surnames to escape association with their mother's crimes. Her elderly parents died within months of each other, their obituaries specifically requesting no contact with their disgraced daughter. Prison psychiatrist Dr. Angela Martinez documented Karen's psychological journey through mandatory counseling sessions. She initially blamed everyone except herself, Dr. Martinez noted in case files. Judge Williams, the passengers who filmed, even United Airlines for inadequate training. Accepting personal responsibility took 18 months. Karen's cell contained dozens of letters from discrimination victims sharing their stories. Her mandatory community service assignment required reading every testimony and writing personal responses acknowledging the harm her behavior represented. "I thought I was protecting America," Karen wrote in one court-mandated reflection essay. "Instead, I was perpetuating the very hatred that makes America weaker. My racism didn't make anyone safer. It made everyone less free." The broader ripple effects continued expanding long after Karen's imprisonment. United Airlines settled class action lawsuits totaling $400 million, funds distributed to thousands of passengers who had experienced discrimination over the past decade. Judge Williams's Airport Justice Foundation grew into a national civil rights powerhouse, with offices in 12 major cities and a staff of 47 attorneys specializing in transportation discrimination cases. The foundation's annual report documented over 3,000 successful interventions. Every day, someone contacts us saying they saw the airport video and finally found courage to report their own discrimination experience, explained Foundation Director Sarah Carter during a Washington Post interview. Karen's crime gave voice to previously silenced victims. Congressional oversight continued through biannual hearings examining airport discrimination statistics. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez frequently cited the Mitchell case when advocating for expanded civil rights enforcement funding. International observers studied American airport discrimination reforms as a model for addressing institutional racism. The European Union invited Judge Williams to address transportation ministers about implementing similar accountability measures. Karen's attempts at redemption remained largely unsuccessful. Her prison letters to Judge Williams went unanswered, as did requests for public forgiveness meetings. The legal system had delivered justice, but personal reconciliation remained elusive. Forgiveness is earned through sustained behavioral change, not demanded through empty apologies, Judge Williams explained during a Harvard Law Review interview. "Miss Mitchell destroyed far more than my passport. She traumatized countless travelers who shared similar experiences." As Karen's release date approached in 18 months, employment prospects remained grim. Background checks would reveal her federal civil rights conviction, making her essentially unemployable in any customer service role. Her future seemed limited to minimum wage positions, accepting convicted felons. The final irony wasn't lost on civil rights advocates. Karen Mitchell, who once controlled airport access for thousands of travelers, would likely never fly commercially again due to her placement on federal watch lists. Judge Williams concluded her Howard commencement address with a challenge that resonated far beyond the law school auditorium. The law gave Miss Mitchell 4 years in prison, but hatred gave her a lifetime sentence of isolation from human decency. Choose love over fear, justice over prejudice, and courage over comfortable silence. The next Karen Mitchell is working somewhere right now. What will you do when you encounter her? If this story inspired you to stand up against injustice, share it with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories where accountability triumphs over hatred. Turn on notifications so you never miss justice being served. Comment below. Have you witnessed discrimination in public spaces? What did you do? And here's the real question that should keep us all awake at night. How many Karen Mitchells are working in positions of power right now, just waiting for their moment of hatred to explode? What are you going to do about it?
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.